I am Christina Cook. I am a Maya Erchi leader from Southern Belize, from representing the Maya Leaders Alliance and the Toledo Alcaldes Association. I'm going to begin by first, again, welcoming you and thanking you for joining us to celebrate marine indigenous peoples and local communities as they build community alliances and networks, as we share knowledge and as we foster leadership among indigenous peoples who are ocean stewards. So I want to welcome you. I want to just set the stage, and maybe if I can just invite the panelists that are here to join me so I'm not here by myself on the stage. Could you join me on the couches here? We have one panelist that's going to be a little late, but he will join us as he arrives. Yes. So just as an introduction to this panelist, we are going to, through this discussion, we're going to showcase the importance of peer-to-peer learning, exchanges, and building coalitions that strengthen indigenous peoples and local communities' voices. And in this panel, we will hear from, I will not introduce the panelists yet, because we want to kick off this panel discussion with a video, and then I will introduce our panelists, and then I will hand it over to our facilitator for the panel discussion, Ms. Batu. So if we could get the video.
Marine indigenous people and local coastal communities are not just users of the ocean. They are the guardians of it. Across the Western Indian Ocean, these community-led systems already exist in so many forms. Different countries use different names, different words, same heart, same purpose. They are all working to manage and protect the ocean they depend on, and they face the same challenges. So the idea emerged, what if they learn directly from each other? In September 2024, something historic happened. Madagascar hosted the first ever Western Indian Ocean LMMA Forum. Over 300 people from 9 countries. Small-scale fishers, civil society, donors, private sector, governments, different voices, one ocean. At the forum, one major step was taken, the draft of the WIO LMMA Declaration, and a collective agreement to continue sharing knowledge, to continue supporting each other, and to build a regional alliance, inspired by the Pacific, but deeply rooted in African realities. This alliance is envisioned as a living hub to elevate the voice and power of marine communities in the Western Indian Ocean. A space for connection, collaboration, and shared strength, bringing together what already exists in the region and helping each other to go further. Since then, consultations have begun at national and regional levels, ensuring the voices from the ground lead this. A steering committee, led by community networks, is now shaping what this alliance will be, with the support of key stakeholders in the region. Stay tuned. This is a birth of a movement for the ocean, a movement for the people, a movement led by the people of the oceans.
Thank you. All right, I think that we can all agree that by making indigenous peoples and local communities knowledge and their contributions visible, we help to amplify their impact, and we ensure that the perspectives of indigenous peoples and local communities shape the future of sea stewardship. I think that's really important, and that underscores our panel discussion today. We will hear from 3 marine indigenous peoples local communities networks representing Africa, South America, and Oceania, who will share lessons learned and challenges in their journey in marine conservation and in building their alliances. We have already joining us Ms. Edna Captoyo from the Pawanka Fund, Mr. Carlos Alberto, who will join us. He's running a little late, he's on another panel, and Kabe Tamu from Oceania. We will also be hearing from Mission Inclusion from Andriane Martel, who will also present the importance of gender and inclusivity in marine indigenous peoples local communities initiatives. We will also introduce the People of the Ocean Breakthrough, part of the broader Ocean Breakthrough Initiative, which aims to support marine indigenous peoples local communities efforts to build a global movement for change. And finally, we will also present updates and highlights from the Abu Dhabi World Conference Congress and explore how indigenous peoples and local communities, networks, and platforms can play a key role in implementing and expanding the People of the Ocean's breakthrough. So without further ado, let me introduce our panel facilitator, Ms. Vatu. She is from the IUCN Esaro IPLC champion, and she's the Ocean Governor Manager. So Vatu, over to you.
Thank you, Christina. So before we start with the panel, I would like to invite the panelists maybe to have a seat, because we're going to make a short presentation about the progress about establishing that alliance of LMMA in Africa. So it's just going to be a short introduction just to share how is that idea of LMMA in Africa progressing. LMMA, for those who are familiar with it, it is the acronym stands for Locally Managed Marine Areas, and where we empower local communities in marine conservation, in developing alternative livelihoods, so they do not rely only on the ocean for their survival. We also support them in mangrove restoration, and we support them in creating permanent and temporary reserves. It started actually in the Pacific. This is not an African initiative. It started in the Pacific in Fiji and got replicated in Madagascar through those temporary octopus closures. And today Madagascar is one of the biggest network of LMMA in Africa, with more than 17,000 square kilometer of the country covered by LMMA. That is more than the coverage of MPA. And Madagascar has their own network. We are talking about coalition and about alliance, and then Madagascar has their own network called the Mihari, a network which is created to advocate for the rights of small-scale fishers, to support capacity building of those locally managed marine areas leaders, and also support in terms of human rights and access to human rights for those communities. But it didn't stay in Madagascar, because today that idea of marine CBRNM, community-based natural resource management, and LMMA is now spreading across the Western Indian Ocean. And as we see in the movie, they are using different acronyms for those LMMA. And then this is where we organized the first small-scale fishers forum in Madagascar in 2024. And which covered 9 countries with 300 stakeholders to discuss about that idea of supporting and creating an alliance in Africa to support marine IPLC. And then we ended up with drafting a declaration with requests from communities on direct access to funding, on the need to get support in terms of capacity building, in terms of visibility and storytelling, but especially in terms of legal recognition. And this is where they requested actually the idea of designing this Western Indian Ocean LMMA alliance. And then since that meeting, we organized lots of consultations, more on the Africa needs, but also on global needs of those marine IPLC. The last one was at the IUCN World Congress. So one of the ideas why they wanted to create that alliance is that all of the marine LPLC are sharing the same challenges, including the lack of legal recognition, the lack of direct access to a market, lack of funding also to achieve their activities. And that is the idea where they had that idea, like, let's build a network that can really strengthen our voices. And this is just some objectives based on some consultations that we are still doing now on the work on that alliance. And this is actually where we will have the panels to learn from Conframe about how did they build their alliance, to learn from Kabai on how did they do, and also from the Pawanka Fund on direct access to funding for IPLC. But most of the work of that alliance would be to support direct access to funding for IPLC, to support capacity building and legal recognition. And then, as mentioned, there is that idea of the people of the ocean breakthrough. I think we've heard about the ocean breakthrough, which is more something that has been discussed at the COP. And within that people of that ocean breakthrough, there are different topics like mangrove breakthrough, or seagrass breakthrough, or coral reef breakthrough. But the idea is we cannot work on those breakthroughs if the people that can really be the guardians of the ocean are not involved. So that is the idea around building that people of the ocean breakthrough. So that is one approach, but today we are more discussing about what is the power of networking communities to support the development of that WIO LMMA alliance in Africa, and potentially then if we do something globally for that people of the ocean breakthrough, that what can be something that we all do together based on what has already been achieved at the WCC Congress in IUCN. So there is an article that got shared actually, and where we shared the request from the communities. So that's just a quick introduction. Our time is quite short, so now I'm gonna ask again our panelists, please, to go on stage. So we're gonna start the panel discussion, and just asking the logistic team if they can put back the visual, please. And Carlos, can you please join the... Okay. Okay, so actually we have already introduced our panelists. We have Carlos, who is just joining us from the Conframe in Brazil, and then welcoming also Marina, who will support us on translation, Portuguese translation. So now, as we've discussed, the objective of this panel is to support the creation of those coalitions in Africa or globally. And then today we're going to hear from the expertise of some IPLC leaders, but also donors and civil society supporting on gender and inclusivity, because that alliance will have a big focus on gender and inclusivity to make sure that women and marginalized people, vulnerable people, will be included in all of those coalitions that we are planning to support. So I'm going to give the question right to Andréane Martel from Mission Inclusion, who is going to share a little bit about the LMMA gender strategy that Mission Inclusion is developing at the moment through the RICI project, and also share like what is the plan and perspective in using that gender strategy for including gender and women and marginalized people in those networking of IPLC.
Okay, hi. Thank you very much, Vatsu. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, WWF, for hosting this panel. I feel very privileged and honored to be sitting among my co-panelists, so thank you for the opportunity. So maybe I will start by talking very briefly about the RICI initiative that is also supporting the people of Ocean Breakthrough and the YIO Alliance. So RICI is an initiative of Mission Inclusion and IUCN, supported by Global Affairs Canada, and we are aiming to interconnect seascape in the Western Indian Oceans and to support the resilience of coastal communities and people of the ocean, with the main focus on women and youth. So we are working on inclusive governance, supporting inclusive and local governance with the collaboration of VATSU, who is leading these activities. So we are developing, as Vatsu was saying, LMMA gender strategy, and we have been doing this with communities, with women's rights organizations. But before talking about the LMMA gender strategy, let me backtrack a little bit just to talk about why it matters to have social inclusion and gender inclusion as part of LMMAs. So we all know that LMMA are very powerful, a powerful space to protect biodiversity and for conservation. But they are also protecting livelihood toward, for example, regenerative blue economy. And when we look at the opportunities for women, we can see that if you look at economic opportunities, at governance, you can see that women are mostly, and youth are mostly related to less profitable value chain and economic opportunities related to marine resources. When you look at representation in LMMA structure, for example, in the Western Indian Ocean, Western Indian Ocean, we gather data that shows that only 15% of LMMAs are with women representation. And then if you look more specifically at different cases, for example, in Kilifi County in Kenya, you will see that 41% of women are involved in establishing LMMA, but when you look at their influence in decision-making, then it dropped to 13%. So even when they have a seat at the table in LMMA, they are not influential, they are not part of decision-making, and they don't have leadership roles. Another aspect is around unpaid care work, We know that it's usually the burden of women who take care of the household and bring the economic, the livelihood of the household. So in the fact that they are excluded of profitable economic value chain also has aspect to that burden that they have at the household. And we also know that they are facing more gender-based violence related to, for example, we've heard about the transactional sex for fish in countries like Kenya and Madagascar, when fish are being scarce and prices are going up. Some women are trafficking their bodies against fish to feed their household. So all of this force us to think about the importance of having an LMMA gender strategy as part of the alliance. This strategy was developed through several consultative processes, including Indigenous people, local communities, women's rights organizations in the 5 countries where we are working. We started by organizing national LMMA forum in 2024 in those 5 countries, and then we had regional, is it better now? We had organized a LMMA regional forum in Madagascar in 2024. And both these national LMMA forum, which brings together practitioners of LMMA, had as part of their outcome gender strategy, strategizing on how to make these spaces more inclusive of the whole communities. As part of this gender strategy that we are developing, and it's still a living document, so presenting it today is actually an opportunity to share it and to hear from others to improve this strategy. But this strategy will be used as a call to action for LMMA committees and also a roadmap. So you have very specific tools and best practice to make your space more inclusive. Yes, gender inclusive, but also inclusive of the whole society, Indigenous people, local community, youth, people with disabilities. So for example, there are a few best practice. One of them is for the LMMA communities to change their bylaws by adopting 4 bylaw clauses. One of them is on quotas for representation. Another one is to ensure that the meeting time, for example, are accessible. Not only the time, but where those meetings are held. Because we were talking before about the unpaid care work and this burden. So if these meetings are happening in a moment where women are taking care of their family, then it doesn't become accessible. There's also the importance of identifying referral for gender-based violence. So ensuring that there's referral within the LMMA committee in case of gender-based violence. There's also the signature of code of conduct for the member of the LMMA. So there's a series of actions that are very actionable, and also a series of indicators to track those changes. For example, after 12 months, we are hoping to see an increase of women representation to 40%, for example, across all LMMAs. So there's a series of targets like that that we are hoping to achieve through that strategy. I don't know if I still have time. So maybe one last thing. Okay, one last thing. So as part of RICI, we are in a certain extent piloting some of these best practices, indicators, strategy among some of the LMMAs in those 5 countries. And we already see great success. For example, in Pangani in Tanzania, in the last election a few months ago, we've seen a major shift in the representation of women. The new president of the fisheries cooperative is now led by a woman. There's 12 out of 18 elected positions that are held by women. And then you start to see the shifting in the priorities as well, where it's no longer only focusing on regulation around fisheries, but it's also about education, raising awareness. So you see that there's a shift as well in the decision making that are coming out of these governing bodies. So maybe I will stop here.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. That was actually great to hear about the LMMA forum, LMMA gender strategy. We've talked a lot about LMMA, but the idea here is actually developing a marine IPLC gender strategy. And we've heard about what Mission Inclusion through the RICI project is doing in 5 countries in Africa. But the idea here is actually also to think of how can we have the same gender strategy even outside those countries, like globally in Oceania or in South America. Then that is something that we need to think, because listening to what you've said, gender inclusivity and issues around women and youth, it's not just in Africa, but it's everywhere. So thank you, Andrea. Now we're going to leave the Western Indian Ocean and going to go to the Oceania with Kebai Tamu from our islands, our home. Oops. And yeah. So we are here actually to learn from our network and coalition outside Africa to help us to support the design of that WAYO LMMA Alliance, then learning from others. So my question for you, is it working?
Oh.
Yeah, my question for you, Kabei, would be, can you share with us what are the key lessons learned from building our islands, our coalition? What are lessons learned? What would be a recommendation that you can share with us working in the Western Indian Ocean to build that LMMA alliance? And also, since we are here in Belém, but it seems that the COP31 will be in Australia. Maybe. So what would be the key priorities for the people of the ocean and coastal communities that should be taken from Belém to Australia?
Kapugaiga, ngaunel kebe, kolekid ngai kaima pastin, laga kuikumabaigal, nalagano. Good day, my name is Kebe Tamu. I'm from the Torres Strait Islands in the Zenat Nation between Australia and Papua New Guinea, for those of you who don't know. As in my culture, I would just like to acknowledge the First Nations people on the land that we gather here this morning before I go any further. Thanks once again for having me on this panel. It's an absolute privilege and honor for me to be sitting here with some great climate leaders of the world. So, Our Islands Are Home, it was a campaign that came about from the Torres Strait 8, where back in 2018 we launched a legal case to the United Nations Human Rights Committee for the Australian government's inaction in climate change in our region, and how it's violated our rights, our human rights. So back in 2023, the decision was handed down, and the United Nations Human Rights Committee found that the Australian government has indeed violated our rights, our human rights, our rights to family life, and our rights to culture. And the minority also found them guilty of violating our rights to life as well. So from that case came about the Our Islands Are Home campaign, which we launched together with 350 Australia, where it was really driven from a grassroots level, elevating the voices of the people of the Torres Strait, where in the past we haven't really had a voice when it comes to climate change. We only suffer the impacts, we hardly contribute. But, you know, we've never had a voice in these sort of spaces. But I guess some of the biggest lessons we've learned throughout our campaign is that Indigenous leadership must guide the climate movement all throughout the world. The First Nations people are the first peoples of the lands, and you know we've managed the ocean for many generations, and we have our own traditional ancient way of practice to manage the sea. It's been around for a very long time. So that's, I guess, the first thing is that, and also that connecting to people and getting, you know, winning people's heart, and actions like this is more important, you know, when we get the grassroots people to lead it. So yeah, that's some of the things that have come about. And even though, you know, the case and the campaign is about climate change in general, but the three human rights that was violated by the Australian government, it does have a big impact on the ocean as well. As Torres Strait Islanders, as seafarers, as people that live and breathe the ocean every day of our lives, you know, the ocean is a big part of us, and managing the ocean is very important to us as well. And I think that one thing we can bring is that First Nations Indigenous practices of management in Australia, in the Torres Strait Islander, is something that the world can learn from. We do have a lot of projects that are run in the country, but I guess the gap is that between government and First Nations grassroots organizations, where a lot of the programs that is running in the Torres Strait, the Torres Strait Land and Sea Ranges, where they look after the Indigenous protected areas, where they do a lot of work in the oceans, in going around and eradicating the crown of thorns, protect and manage the reef. It's government managed, funded and run. But, you know, for us, our aspiration is always to be able to do it ourselves from a grassroots level, from grassroots organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Keba. Actually, it's really impressive to hear about that campaign and what you guys are doing in the Oceania, and we will give the opportunity to the participants to ask questions about that later. So now after Oceania, we are going to South America with Carlos. So we have Carlos from the CONFREM, the National Commission for the Strengthening of Extractive Reserves and Traditional Extractivist Coastal. And my question is, what is the conference lessons learned in building that commission? And from your view, I know that you are a great advocate. I've seen it actually. So what steps of advocacy should we prioritize to support the people of the ocean? What are the key priorities in terms of advocacy?
Bom dia a todos presentes aqui, todas e todos. Eu sou um pescador, um jangadeiro da região dos Abrolhos, que fica no sul do Brasil, na região mais ao sul do Brasil. Aqui nós estamos na Amazônia, eu moro mais ao sul do Brasil. A região dos Abrolhos é uma área muito extensa, com muitas áreas de manguezais e áreas coralinas, de oceanos, né?
Hi everyone, so I will support Carlinhos translating for him. Just to let you know, I'm not a professional translator, so I'm here really supporting him. So he introduced himself as a traditional fisherman from Brazil, specifically from the Abrolhos region, which is in the northeast Brazil, a bit more south than here where we are in the Amazon. And he's saying that from the mangrove in the Amazon into the place where he lives, there are lots of mangroves and coral reefs that they depend on.
No Brasil existe um modelo de área protegida que é a reserva extrativista. E ela surgiu aqui na Amazônia com a luta de Chico Mendes. E no nosso país existem 28 segmentos de povos indígenas e comunidades locais reconhecidas através de um decreto presidencial. E que nós, enquanto pescadores, lançamos mão dessa estratégia criada por Chico Mendes para também criar áreas protegidas na beira da praia, nos ecossistemas costeiros e marinhos.
So in Brazil, we have a specific type of protected areas that is called extractivist reserves. It's a formal type of protected area that was created because of the grassroots movements in the Amazon, especially from Chico Mendes. And the people of the ocean, the coastal communities in Brazil, they adopt the same strategy of the Amazon people and started to fight for the creation of resecs, that's how we call it, also in the coast of Brazil to protect their territories. There are more than 28 categories of traditional people in Brazil, and the fishermen and fisherwomen are one of those categories.
Nós criamos a Confrem, que é uma organização que tem abrangência nacional, a partir de uma iniciativa de lutar pela defesa dos nossos maretórios. Porque no Brasil, até um certo tempo atrás, defender os ecossistemas manguezais, as áreas costeiras, ainda era muito difícil. Hoje melhorou, mas nós fomos muito criminalizados, muitos companheiros morreram para poder nós termos áreas protegidas na zona costeira do nosso país.
So, Confrem is the name of the initiative or the network that Carlinhos is part of. Is a national movement that connects people from protected areas along the Brazilian coast. And this movement was created especially because when they were trying to create those protected areas, those sustainable use protected areas in Brazil, it was a huge fight. So many people actually died in order to be able to create those protected areas. So they decided to fight together in order to make sure they could use this public policy to guarantee their territories and their resources.
Nós, ao longo da nossa trajetória, nós duplicamos a quantidade de reservas extrativistas no nosso país. Hoje passa de 30 reservas extrativistas. São territórios e maretórios que protegem comunidades tradicionais pesqueiras e que sempre foram pressionadas. Para nós foi um grande aprendizado lutar para criar a Confrem. Além desses territórios todos protegidos, nós temos organizações fortes de jovens, de mulheres. Há um protagonismo que a gente tenta fazer de forma equilibrada, mas enfrentamos grandes desafios. E os principais desafios que a gente enfrenta no nosso país são as mudanças políticas e de governos que acontecem.
So now there are about. So today in Brazil there are 32 marine reserves, and this was all because of their fights. So he's really proud of being part of this movement, especially because it's the main instrument they have to protect their ways of life. Yeah. Yeah, sorry. And it's important for you to know that Confrei movement also includes women and youth as part of it. And it's actually the way that they connect and really fight for their rights.
Nós interagimos, a Confrei ela atua numa organização também a nível de Brasil e também na América Latina através da ULAPA, que é a União Latino-Americana da Pesca de Pequena Escala. Nós estamos numa perspectiva de assumir determinados desafios, porque a crise do clima, ela não só ela nos afeta primeiro na zona costeira e marinha, mas também nós somos uma das principais ferramentas de se ter uma estratégia de enfrentamento da crise climática através da proteção dos nossos territórios.
So, one of the main challenges that they face is the change in the government, since the instrument they have to protect the territory is a protected area. When the government changes, it's always hard to. They have to fight to keep this area as a protected area, and they have to fight even more to create new areas. And he's saying that Confrei is part of a Latin America movement called OLAPA, and they believe the coastal communities are the most impacted by climate change, but they are also one of the main solutions we have to fight against climate change and improve the implementation of ocean-based solutions.
Nossas principais ações são para consolidar os territórios das comunidades que estão em reservas extrativistas e defender a criação de novas reservas extrativistas. Ontem nós estávamos aqui com a ministra Marina Silva entregando uma carta para ela, para que aproveitássemos a COP, e já que o Brasil está falando que essa é a COP da ação, que o Brasil criasse áreas marinhas protegidas para as comunidades tradicionais. Porque criar as áreas marinhas e implementá-las, dando direito às famílias a acessarem políticas públicas, fortalecendo as comunidades, deve ser a maior estratégia climática dessa COP, já que o Brasil está falando isso. Porque é a mesma luta que nós, enquanto comunidades locais e os povos indígenas aqui no Brasil, estamos fazendo.
So their main agenda is to create new reserves and implement the reserves that already exist. So more and more coastal communities are protected and have the rights over their own land, or over their own seas, I would say. And it's important for you to know that here, since Brazil keeps saying that this is the COP of implementation, they believe new reserves should be created at COP30 as a signal from the Brazilian government of this commitment with implementation. Because reserves are an important instrument for them to access public policies, to have more, like healthcare, education, and they believe that with new reserves, really more coastal communities will be able to take care of their own territory, and then we are going to be talking about implementation of ocean-based solutions.
A maior solução para o enfrentamento da crise climática, já que nós somos colocados e estamos nos territórios onde há preservação e conservação, nossos governos deveriam estar aqui apresentando como solução proteger os territórios dos povos indígenas e comunidades locais no mundo todo. Mas a gente não está vendo isso aqui. No debate dos breakthroughs, tanto de corais quanto os outros que estão acontecendo de manguezais, a gente acredita que esse breakthrough que está sendo criado dos povos do mar, ele deveria ser transversal. Ele deveria perpassar por todos os outros, inclusive na garantia de financiamento direto para fortalecimento das organizações locais.
So he believes that traditional coastal communities are the solution, part of the climate solution, and that's why empowering the communities should be what the government, that's what they have to do. And for the Peoples of the Ocean breakthrough idea, he believed that it have to be a cross-cutting breakthrough, because none of the other breakthrough will be actually real or will be implemented without communities that are the ones who are there in the territory, protecting biodiversity, being safeguarded and empowered in this process.
Só concluir, talvez nós não precisemos de um novo caminho. Talvez a humanidade precise trilhar o caminho das comunidades indígenas e das comunidades locais. Criar novos caminhos, cometendo velhos erros, não vai resolver a crise do clima.
So he's saying that we don't need new pathways. We actually need to strengthen the pathways that the traditional coastal communities and indigenous people have already created.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Carlos. You have mentioned everything that we needed in terms of the needs of empowerment for the communities, how can we shape this people of the ocean breakthrough, but especially on valuing what is existing instead of creating new things, and the importance of consultation of communities. So now, after the Oceania and South America, we are going back to Africa. And we have Edna from the Pawanka Fund, who is gonna share about what is Pawanka Fund doing in terms of support for IPLC, especially in terms of direct access to funding. And from your view, talking about breakthrough, people of the ocean breakthrough, what is the breakthrough that needs to be done? What kind of change and innovation should we do to really make sure that local communities and the IPLC have direct access to funding?
Thank you, Vatsu, Soronyowo, Takwenya Poisho. I think you can hear me well? Okay, it's fine. Takwenya Poisho, greetings from my peoples. I also want to acknowledge the owners of this land and also Vatsu and the team for organizing this session, and acknowledge each and every one of you being here to listen to our voices. So Pawanka Fund is a global indigenous-led fund established really to directly channel resources to indigenous communities globally to support their self-determined development, and they do it in different ways. So we center on community defining their own priorities, but also on really protection and revitalization of traditional knowledge, as well as taking a rights-based approach and also using cultural indicators in the way we give to communities. But also our other role as Pawanka is really to transform traditional philanthropy, because a lot of our indigenous communities were not accessing resources directly, and also the pathways available were difficult. So we try to engage with different philanthropy, mentor upcoming indigenous-led funds, but also transform philanthropy by engaging them to change their mindset and also to shift resources and power to indigenous peoples, you know. And we also partner with other funds that work with local communities. So we have other allies, and we are in a partnership trying to influence a second pledge in this conference since the Climate Week. And we have more than 20 organizations committing to a second pledge since Glasgow COP, Climate COP. And so far, coming to your questions, the lessons we've learned also with the direct giving we've had with Pawanka is direct access and channeling resources directly to indigenous people, even local communities, enables them to really sustain actions, also revitalize their knowledge, but also defining their priorities and also ensure sustainability in the long term. And this is important with the work that they do locally. And importance of also providing long-term support has been key. Of course, a lot of funds do not have multi-year support. It's annual. And so what our partners, even with the 10 years of Pawanka existence, we've had an evaluation, and our partners were asking for multi-year support to continue strengthening their work long term. But what is essential is the importance of trust building and also building relationship, because when you shift power to communities, then they're able to also trust, because they need to also trust us. We assume that funders need communities we need to trust them, but they also need community trust and to take that risk to partner, because community also take risk to receive funding because it can destabilize systems that are there. And so it's two-way relationship, and also the importance of mutual learning at different levels. We all learn together as we grow as funders, and also as indigenous peoples and local communities. And also the aspect that adaptability and also flexibility in funding, because community work with different timelines. I come from an indigenous community. We have a different calendar of doing things. And so funding needs to be direct access, but also allow for that flexibility in communities defining their own timelines, and also when it doesn't work, giving them room to adjust. And also that is also a lesson we've learned over the decade as Pawanka. And I think in terms of the breakthrough initiative and what you have to really be able to sustain that, and also in the context of direct access, the global financial architecture, whether within the Climate Corp, Climate Convention, outside with other foundations, it's a challenge because the funding architecture is designed for communities not to access it. It's difficult even for us as a fund, you know. So imagine a community organizations in Africa. It's difficult, and we have coastal communities, even others who are land-based, coming and saying, you are the first fund who gave us money without us having an audited report or even having a legal registration, you know. And funders need to know they have to work with community to build the institution and to support and to build, because there are existing structures even without the legalities. And so what we've established also with Pawanka is what we call Land Pawanka, which is an initiative to support strengthening of capacity, not development of capacity, because capacity is there. It's just some gaps that we need to work with partners globally, and our partners who want to be part of the process. We already have a number who are defining the gaps in their cultural ways, and we co-created this Land Pawanka program so that it can support them to strengthen those gaps. So I think funders need to take the risks and also partner with community based on trust and have those models. But also one key point is really devolving decision making, because where decision is made matters. So because if you're not part of the decision making table, also you'll be in the menu. So it's important that indigenous people are part of the decision making structure within different funds as well to define it. And with Pawanka, it's governed by indigenous leaders from the world, 10 leaders. And also with other foundations, we've started to see like Climate Justice Resilience Fund and others having governance structures, including indigenous peoples and local communities. And I think those are good models we need to emulate and share within these spaces and other spaces to showcase, so that we can transform philanthropy to support the work that the LMMS are doing, because we see they do a lot of work, but also secure tenure. That's a critical area, because communities are working on areas that are not legally recognized, even though they are traditional owners. So legal tenure as well is key and essential, because then it gives community really ownership, and also the strength to know that they can define their own aspirations and carry forth their work. Yeah, so thank you, Vatsu, and I'll answer any question, if any. Thank you.
Thank you, Edna. Actually, Pawanka Fund is one of my inspiration in really doing those, having something on direct access to funding in that alliance. So thank you for Pawanka Fund to be one of those channels to support direct access to funding for communities, and what you've said at the end about they should be involved in decision making and donors should trust the communities. That's really something strong. Christina, I think we have 5 minutes questions maybe for the participants. So if anyone has burning question for a panelist for the next 5 minutes, then we'll, I don't know if do we have a mic?
Yeah, thank you so much. And my question goes to Andreas from US. We were
For
just-
who? For her?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I was just concerned on how she actually brought out issues, especially mentioning Africa. She mentioned Mombasa in Kenya, Tanzania, and Tanzania also. And my question goes, how can the indigenous communities and government develop a better data system to monitor and evaluate progress in gender and youth inclusion?
We go to the second question.
Mine is for Carlos. How can we create policy that goes beyond those election cycles for to protect coastal marine areas and that is lasting? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Henrique, and my question is for all the table to ask for you how you feel the necessity to not just talk about the empowerment of communities, but the recognition of their tenure rights, of their territories, and at the same time, what is the human rights-based approach that you really believe that works on, and how you define that approach? Então, já traduziu, Marina? Já.
Who would like to start to reply to the questions?
Maybe I can jump in very quickly. So in terms of gender and more inclusive policies, well, first of all, it's about acknowledgement and recognition. Recognition of the differentiated impact, access of different groups within the society, and then it needs to be embedded in policies. It needs to be embedded in national plan. It need to be, and then you need to have specific like tracking and to make sure that it goes beyond specific government and the movement of government. But you also need to work with communities to build advocacy capacities to advocate for rights, to advocate for change in policy making. So I think you need to work at all these different levels. Because as I said before, changing bylaws, having representation is not enough.
I don't really understand the question. Can I tell?
I think with the question on tenure rights, land tenure is central to everything, you know, without that, and I think that's an important element that communities have been pushing for. I think in the global south, even in the global north, a lot of indigenous peoples and local communities really have a challenge in terms of securing tenure rights. But we've seen some funds supporting communities to strengthen that and to seek the legal recognition. Even some partners we work with in Brazil trying to get those tenure security. And of course, a rights-based approach, I believe, is the one that centers communities, allowing communities to define their own priorities and what they want to do, and not anyone coming. As a fund, we don't define what community wants to do. If they want to work on language, yes. If they want to work on their coastal ecosystem or knowledge based on that, they do it. So they know best, yeah. Thank you.
Como fazer políticas que sobrevivam a governos. Aqui no Brasil, nós temos alguns espaços de tomada de decisão de povos e comunidades tradicionais. E nós conseguimos também interagir entre os diferentes grupos, do ponto de vista da estratégia macro, desde a comunidade, a regional, a nível nacional. Então,
So he's saying, it's a difficult question, but what they do in Brazil is that they work in different levels of decision making. So they have the community level, the regional level, and also the national level. And they work together with other local communities and not only within the fishermen and fisherwomen.
governos com posturas antagônicas aos nossos direitos, eles normalmente fragilizam as instâncias públicas que deveriam nos atender. Mas quando a comunidade está empoderada, inclusive para implementar, não só construir, mas também implementar a política pública, essa lógica ela não afeta muito a gente.
So he's saying that there are participatory spaces in Brazil that in different levels that they occupy when the government is against the communities. What they do is to organize themselves to keep pushing to participate, for those spaces to keep existing and to participate in this. And that's why they have to be empowered so they can actually keep pushing for it.
O governo anterior ele foi um governo de postura fascista no Brasil. E o nosso Congresso Nacional é um dos piores da história. Mas hoje também nós temos estruturas sólidas de participação de povos e comunidades tradicionais. Eu fui presidente do Conselho Nacional de Povos e Comunidades Tradicionais. E uma das principais estratégias que a gente tem é nós precisamos falar por nós mesmos. Nós precisamos de parceiros, não de intermediários, em todos os espaços. E eu acho que isso é que faz com que determinadas políticas públicas, determinadas ações de direitos, eles não se percam ao longo da nossa trajetória.
So he said that the last government in Brazil was really, really challenging. It was the fastest government, and our National Congress is also a problem. But what they do is that they speak for themselves and by themselves, but not by themselves. But what they do is to partner with other organizations and other institutions to make sure they will keep occupying this place. So now Brazil has important and solidified participatory spaces. That was one of their fights over the last, 20 years. So they keep pushing for it and participate and partner to make sure that they are going to be there and keep fighting for their own rights.
So really quickly. So I think the recognition of our human rights is very important, especially the three rights that was violated: our rights to family life, our rights to life, and our rights to culture. And I think all three are very important for not only Torres Strait Islanders but First Nations people all throughout the country, and especially our rights to culture, practicing our culture in our homelands, our communities, our islands, and we have a deep connection to the land, the sea, and it's not only a physical connection, but it's a spiritual connection that goes back many generations. And it's something that if we have to move away and become climate change refugees in Australia, that disconnect would have a massive impact on a race of people, Zenatkas, Torres Strait Islanders. Thank you.
Maybe just to give a quick summary of the key insights that was presented by this really dynamic panel. First, let me thank you. I think you did excellent and shared with us a lot of your experiences. I think central to all of this, as we've heard from our panelists, is that tenure security is important, right? Nothing can be done if you are not able to secure your rights to your seascapes, to your landscapes, and that is on the basis of your relationship to place, relationship to each other, but also recognizing that inclusion is very important And when we talk about inclusion, you would have heard repeatedly that it's not just about the numbers, it's not just about the percentage, it's also about the decision making. How are women integral in the decision making when we think about the management and the stewardship of our seas and our lands? And I think it's really important to share the strategies of going to the UN Human Rights Committee. I think that's a really excellent way of ensuring that there is legal recognition of our right to life, our right to culture, and our right to family. And I think as well, you know, the strategy of developing these special protected areas that are managed by Indigenous peoples themselves. And to the question of the election cycles, I think it's very important that we recognize that our strategies have to be legally embedded within our constitutions, within our laws. So developing these protected areas, and every time a new government comes in, it changes, we have to fight for legal protection of those stewardship rights. And we have to be central in the decision making of those management strategies. And of course, we can't do anything without the resources, right? And so allies like Pawanka Fund, philanthropy, that understand our common agenda and that can support us, not just through projects, because our work is not projects based. Our work is our life, our fight for survival. And so our relationship with the donor communities has to be long-term. It has to be one that is self-determined, and they have to be adaptable to our priorities, but also to the dynamics of our survival, because we are always operating in contentious spaces as Indigenous peoples. So it's not just we might write a proposal now, but the circumstances change as we contend with new realities. So I think this was excellent. I want to congratulate all of you. Thank you for sharing your experiences. And of course, the whole reason this panel was put together is to emphasize the importance of, in Maya language we say komonil, the importance of networking and coalition building, because together we are stronger than we are separately. And so thank you very much for your time. We've run out of time, but thank you so much.